If you're seeing this, then that means the prayer that I've been making with every ounce of hope left in my body has been answered. Thank God. I've been trying for the last 3.5 hours to get through any way possible to the outside world with no luck. I'm no computer expert, but the water damages my laptop has suffered must have severely fucked up the satellite link up something fierce. Any attempt to reach any website, be it the official Coast Guard one or even most social media sites like Facebook or Twitter, have all yielded with computer crashes and rebooting. But for some unknown reason to me, Reddit, or should I be more specific and say this particular page on Reddit, managed to load perfectly without any issues. So I'm asking here and now if anyone reads this for help. For the record, my name is Nathan Rogers. I'm 33 years old and I was the helmsman of a fishing vessel called Point of No Return. I say was because currently she's thousands of feet beneath my feet and the churning surface of the North Atlantic. But I'm getting ahead of myself. In case anything happens to us before anyone reads this, or I permanently lose connection, I should give as much of a detailed account as I can. That way, someone might know where to find us, or at least know what happened. We left our home of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, about a week and a half ago, bound for Grand Banks off the coast of Newfoundland. The point of no return is a long liner, and our aim was to mainly catch swordfish along with cod and haddock. The prime season for a good haul was ending, and with our haul during the summer falling short of our usual quota, we decided to make one final run and try to make some extra dough. When we arrived, we started off hauling in many good-sized fish. Everyone was happy.
Yeah, man, yeah! That's what I'm talking about!
Called Spencer, the youngest member of our crew, as the first fish was hauled on board. But it was short-lived. After a few days, we began to fail to catch, well, anything. It was as if all the fish had disappeared from the area. With our holds not even a quarter full, Gabe, our captain, made the call to sail even further east, to the Flemish Cape. Thanks to a few of us making the mistake of watching the perfect storm to pass the time on the trip out, a few of us understandably had reservations about going so far from any landmass. But the captain pointed out the obvious.
Boys, I wish it weren't necessary to do.
He began rubbing his thick white beard.
But it's either we try the Cape or go home broke.
He looked to the sky, which looked clear.
Besides, the radar says there shouldn't be any storms for the duration of our trip.
Up until now, I've never believed in the concept of jinxing, but I can't help but swear that he jinxed the hell out of us with those words. We made way for the Cape and reached it about a day or so later. To our shock and, of course, elation, we began to haul in a metric fuck ton of fish. Any apprehensiveness we had melted away like butter in a pan, and we all became infected by the thought of how much money we were going to make. Until, that is, the dark clouds began to move on the horizon. I'd been at my station at the helm, and I'd looked out the starboard windows to see the ominous darkness rolling towards us. I remember just thinking to myself, what the hell? Reliving the fact that according to the weather reports, the nearest storm was hundreds of miles away, and yet here I was, staring one dead in the face. You gotta be fucking kidding me, I muttered, flicking on the ship's autopilot and walking to the door that led outside. I pushed it open, the thick smell of ocean and fish wafting over me. Looking down at the AFT deck, I saw the captain helping others ready the lines for the next drop. "Hey, Cap!" I yelled, raising my voice to be heard over the booming bashing of the hard rock music. He glanced up, shielding his eyes so that he could see me better. I stabbed my finger towards the gathering storm, which occasionally flashed with lightning. I still perfectly remember how the captain's face filled with shock and surprise as he turned to see it. The rest of the crew turned and spotted it as well. "Oh, that's just great!" Will, another of our crew, shouted out exasperatedly, dropping the hooks and line to the deck. The rest of the crew let out our curses, and some turned to the captain, asking him questions. I couldn't hear what they were asking over the music. After speaking to them for a minute, he walked over and turned off the boombox before making his way up the steps and standing beside me.
"Where exactly now did that come from?"
he muttered, pulling his hat off his head and scratching at the tufts of grey hair that remained there. "I don't know, sir," I admitted, watching another bolt of lightning flash inside it. "All I know is I was at my station looking around. One minute I don't see it, the next I trailed off. I followed the man back into the wheelhouse as he walked to the radar display. For a moment he stared down at it, then lightly began to smack it.
"Piece of shit!"
he growled. "What's wrong?" I asked him. He gestured to the screen.
"The stupid radar must be on the fritz again. It doesn't show the storm on the radar at all."
A small wave of confusion swept over me. I'd personally repaired the system last time it wonked out, and as far as I knew, it had been working perfectly. But as I stepped next to him, I saw he was right. No storm clouds were displayed on the radar in the direction that the storm was coming from. I remember thinking, what the... as a shiver rushed up my spine. One, I didn't understand to why I had it. The cabin was warm and comfortable, and yet it felt as if I just walked through a thick fog. Finding my voice, I looked at the captain, who held a thoughtful gaze. "So, what do we do?"
"I'm not gonna risk you boys on my ship, especially not after we have a good catch in the old. Start plotting us a course back to Portsmouth. Hopefully we'll manage to stay just ahead of the storm."
And with that, he turned and left the wheelhouse, heading back outside to help the others store the gear in preparation for our departure. I could hear the faint sound of them yelling to each other as they rushed about, the music playing again as well. I walked to the starboard window and gazed out. The storm appeared closer now, the lightning flashes becoming more frequent. A particularly bright flash came, and for a moment my eyes locked on a peculiar cloud formation that had a silhouette in it. I blinked my eyes rapidly, the rational side of my brain attempting to wrangle in the other. No, there was no way that you just saw that, I thought. You know full well that storms play tricks on your eyes. Shaking my head, I returned to the helm, turning off the autopilot and nudging the throttle forward, hearing the rumble of the engines increase. I kept telling myself that I'd been seeing things, but another shiver ran up my spine as I couldn't shake the image from my mind, the image of a cloud formed in the shape of a human skull. We only made it about 7 or 8 miles west when the storm overtook us. I've been on the water my entire life and been fishing on commercial vessels since I was 18 years old. I've seen many strange and sometimes unexplainable things, and I've seen my fair share of storms, and some of them unbelievably bad. But I'm not exaggerating when I tell you I've never seen a storm as fierce as this one. 20 minutes after the dark grey, almost black cloud slid over my head, the point of no return was being hammered by 12 to 14-foot swells. Crashing water onto the deck, the wind howling as fierce as a banshee, and the world around us turned almost pitch black. The only illumination coming from the almost blinding flashes of lightning which were followed by roars of thunder. I gripped the helm with hands that had begun turning white at the knuckles, bracing myself for each impact. The captain stood beside me, gripping the metal railing next to the helm to keep from falling over.
Just keep going,
he yelled to me. Some of the crew stood behind us, staring out at the maelstrom which had left them with wide, frightened eyes. It was a fear that I found infectious, for as much as I kept calm for the outer appearance, inside I was fucking terrified. As horrifying as a horror movie monsters are made out to be, they do not hold a candle to the existential dread and terror that Mother Nature at her worst can instill in you. Suddenly, wait. One of our engineers flew up the stairs from below.
Captain, we're taking on water somewhere and I can't find the source.
I saw many of my crew's faces go pale, but the captain remained calm.
Olia, get below and help Stroksky find the source and either patch it or seal it. Then start the pumps and get the water out of the boat.
For a moment, nobody moved until he barked again.
Do you want to end up at the bottom of the ocean? Move your asses!
That got their attention, and they quickly followed Wyatt down the stairs to the crew quarters and lower decks. As we crest another huge swell, I spared a glance at the radar screen. It still showed no sign of the storm on its green screen as the line made its way around in a circle. I shook my head, feeling a strange feeling, one I couldn't place, that came over me. I pushed it away, forcing myself to focus, reminding myself that everyone was counting on me, using the words, "Everyone's counting on you, Nate. Keep your head in the game and pray to the good Lord above that you make it out of this." I shot a glance at the captain. "You really think we're gonna make it through this, Gabe?" I asked, the seriousness in my using his first name making him look hard at me before clapping his hand on my shoulder.
With a good crew and a terrific man at the helm, son. Yes, I do.
He declared, pulling out a pipe from his pocket and lighting it. Thick, hazy smoke filled the room as he spoke again.
After all, I've been through far worse than this.
For some reason, I doubted the man's words, but I tried to let them bring some much-needed comfort to me. A large wave crashed over the bow, splashing the front windows with water and obscuring my view ahead for a few moments. When it cleared, the world outside was again pitch black, the outer lights of the boat barely illuminating 20 feet around us. A strong vibration suddenly emitted from the floor beneath my feet, and I shot a glance down at the metal. I remember thinking, just what the hell was that? My answer was given a moment later after crew member Andrew ran up the stairs. He was soaked with seawater and his eyes darted around in their sockets in panic.
Captain, the pumps are working their hardest, but we're taking on more water than they can expel. We can't find the source of the leak either.
The captain cursed and turned to me.
Nathan, hold fast up here and keep us going east. I'm gonna go down below and try to help.
Not giving me a chance to answer, he turned away and began to head towards the stairs. I just turned back to look out the windows when the brightest flash of lightning came, turning the world around us from night to day. It also revealed something dead ahead. Something that made my heart almost stop. Oh, fuck my life, I managed out in a whisper. Racing towards the point of no return was a rogue wave, one that dwarfed all the swells around us. My mind screamed at me that it had to be at least 30 or 40 feet high, enough to block out the sky ahead. "Captain!" I screamed at the top of my lungs. I heard him stop. Then the sound of his footsteps as he dashed back next to me.
God almighty,
I heard him breathe.
Nate, turn us broadside onto the wave. Our only hope is for us to roll over it completely.
I turned to see him, snatching for the microphone headset, which connected the wheelhouse with the ship's intercom as I began ripping the helm to port. Behind me, I heard Andrew let out a strangled scream as he spied the behemoth racing towards us.
All hands, we have a rogue wave incoming. Brace for impact.
The captain shouted into the mic. Below, I heard the terrified shouts of the crew spring up. I clenched the helm in a death grip as tears silently poured out in my eyes. In my head, the scene from The Perfect Storm flashed. The one where Andrea Gale is flipped and driven into the ocean. I only had enough time for a quick thought. Please, God. No. The wave smashed into us with all the force of a dozen runaway semi-trucks. The port side windows of the ship shattered into 1,000 pieces, and freezing seawater rushed over us in a seemingly endless wave. For a moment, my mind was unable to comprehend what had happened. And then it began screaming at me as it felt the whole world begin to rotate. We're fucking underwater. We are flipping underwater in the wave. The realization horrified me and I felt certain that we would be sinking like a stone to the bottom of the ocean. I let out a silent prayer for my death to be quick. And then, to my astonishment, we emerged back into the world above the waves. The shock at still being alive froze me in place, and then I looked around. I spied the captain, who locked his arms in a death grip around the metal bar next to me. Andrew had been tossed to the back of the wheelhouse. I saw a large gash on his head as he stumbled to his feet, coughing out water. Instantly, the captain ran to the stairs and shouted down to them, "Somebody get up here and give me a damage report." As he did, I looked down at the screens in front of me. I felt a wave of despair wash over me as I saw most had short-circuited after their meeting with the ocean. The radar still glowed green, though the screen cracked and flickered as I thought it would go out at any second. Wyatt appeared at the top of the stairs, blood dripping from his right arm and soaked to the bone.
"Give me some good news, Wyatt,"
the captain yelled over the howl of the wind that screamed into the wellhouse through the broken windows. To me it sounded almost like a plea rather than a demand. Wyatt shook his head.
"The port side engine is dead, sir. Starboard is still running, but barely. Our main generator is dead and the backup is running everything at full capacity."
He let out a shaky breath and looked at the floor beneath before finishing.
"And the pumps are dead as well, sir."
For a moment nobody spoke. The implications of the man's words hung like nooses around all of our necks. The pumps were dead, and so were we. It was only a matter of time before the ship filled with too much water and foundered. We are now running on borrowed time. I thought numbly when the captain spoke again, his tone more subdued.
"Go down below and tell the men to gather all the emergency supplies they can. Food, water, first aid kits. Evan, bring the life raft up and set it down. We'll stay with the ship as long as she'll take us. Then we'll abandon ship into the raft."
Wyatt began to speak. "Captain, with all due respect, these waves will tear apart the captain cut him off.
"Don't argue with me. Just do it."
He barked. Wyatt took a step back, then turned wordlessly and headed back down the gangway. He then turned to Andrew, who began shaking slightly, a result of both the freezing water covering him and fear.
"Andrew, try the radio and send out a distress call. You know the drill."
For a moment the younger man stood still as a statue. Then he rushed over to the radio and jammed his hand down on the transmission button.
"Mayday, mayday. This is the fishing vessel. Point no return. Registration number 57306. We are approximately, I don't know, somewhere off the coast of Newfoundland. And we need urgent assistance. Our ship is taking on water and sinking. Does anybody read me?"
I tuned his words out as he began to repeat, turning instead to look out the broken windows. I didn't say it out loud, but I knew we were royally fucked. Why, it's right. These waves will tear that raft to pieces long before anyone reaches us. The numbness began to spread as I was faced with the unavoidable thought that these might be the final minutes of my life. Moments of my past flashed in front of my eyes, growing up as a child in Portsmouth, spending weekends at friends of my mother's in Kittery Point, visiting BG's boathouse with my mother and my aunt, my relationship with Donna, my ex. A single image suddenly appeared in my mind. My friends and family crowded around a cross, commemorating us, crying. My breath started coming in short, ragging gasps as I tried to force away the image. The sound snapped me out of my inner battle with my mortality, and I blinked for a second. What the? Then it came again. The realization suddenly crushed into me as hard as the wave had. The radar. Looking down, I watched the flickering screen as the line made its way around again. This time, as the sound rang through the wheelhouse a third time, I saw the large shape appear, and it sends a bolt of renewed hope through me. Captain, I've got something on the radar. The sound of Andrew's distress call stops as both men turn towards me. I think it's a ship. Instantly, the man was at my side, gazing down at the screen. I don't believe it. You're right, he breathed out in an astonished tone. Then he locked eyes with me. Are you thinking what I'm thinking, Nate? He asked. I swallowed. Gabe, right now there isn't much of an alternative. He looked at me for another second before nodding. Then, head approximately south-southwest and pull on the power. For the next 20 minutes we crashed through the storm in silence, aside from Andrew, who returned to attempting distress calls. Finally he gave up. Captain, the rogue wave must have snapped our radio antenna off, he said. Still we continued on. I strained my eyes against the lashing wind and rain pouring through the windows and praying to catch sight of our only chance of survival. And then, in the flash of lightning, I saw it. Even a few miles away from us, I could tell the ship was huge. She rose almost imposingly out of the water, rolling up and down in the waves of the storm. Another flash of lightning showed that her hull was black, white, and the upper decks were painted white. Two large red and black smokestacks rose to the sky, almost disappearing out of sight. I heard the captain let out a low whistle as he spotted it as well. Captain, she's got to be about, 800 feet long? I called over the wind. Try more like 1,000, he yelled back. By now, most of the rest of the crew had reappeared from below deck. They brought the gear that the captain had ordered up and packed it into waterproof bags. I'd also requested that the satellite phone and laptop be brought up as well. Unfortunately, the phone was very much dead from being submerged, but the laptop, according to Will, was able to be salvaged. When they caught sight of the giant ship, they let out cheers and turned to hug one another. I realized I hadn't been the only one feeling that death was breathing down our necks. As we drew within half a mile of the ship, I realized that something was off. Captain, she's dead in the water. Not moving at all, I yelled. If she had been under power, it
would have taken longer to draw near. The captain looked hard and then nodded. "You're right. She must have snapped off her mooring lines in the storm somewhere. It's a ghost ship, adrift." I saw the crew's face fall at the news. "So what do we do now?" Kenny, the other engineer, asked. The captain turned to them as I steered us closer. "We stick to the plan. We draw alongside her and find a way aboard. We transfer our equipment on board and then we'll go from there." The look of hope returned in some of their eyes, but I saw apprehension enter others. I don't blame them one bit. Fear still coursed through my veins. All it takes is one screw up, one mistake, and we're all dead. The captain ordered me to move around to the ship's port side so as to give us a small bit of shelter from the storm. He then snapped on a powerful searchlight, which thankfully hadn't been taken out by the wave, and traced it all over the ship. A few minutes later, I heard him let out a triumphant laugh. "Ha! Nate, move us next to the middle of the ship. There's a ladder dangling there." He was right. I saw the white lines and wooden steps flailing about in the wind. Sparing a glance behind us and seeing the ocean was beginning to creep over the back of the Tannstrom, I hastily maneuvered the point of no return over to the ladder, nudging the throttle into neutral as we drew alongside. Sparing a glance out the open side door, I saw Spencer and Will reaching out with boat hooks to snatch the ladder. Yes, the two men hooked it, lashed it to our railing. "Okay, 1 minute at a time, get the gear and get up there," he yelled. Slowly, almost painfully, the 8 members of our crew made their way up the ladder and onto the ship. As I watched Wyatt climb out of sight, a sound caught my attention. I looked down to see all of the remaining gauges die, and the sound of the remaining engine idling die away. I just thought to myself, crap, as almost immediately afterwards I became aware of the sound, a new sound. It was one that spurred a new wave of panic in me. It was the sucking sound of the sea rapidly flooding the point of no return. "Captain, she's going under!" I screamed, snatching up the last bag of supplies. I saw the man give an almost panicked look as he cast a final look at the vessel he'd worked his entire life to afford, before shouting at me and Kenny, the last 2 aboard, beside himself. "Alright boys, abandon ship." Kenny went up the ladder first. Unable to wait for him to make it all the way up, the captain and I unsnapped the ladder from the railing and began climbing after him. We were halfway when I heard the sucking sound increase to a fever pitch. Stopping and sparing a look below me, I saw the point of no return's bow lift out of the water as her stern slipped below the waves. She rapidly began to sink, and I turned to continue climbing. And that's when a scream came from overhead. I snapped my gaze up to see a body fall past me, missing me by less than a foot. For a moment, shock kept my mind from working until I realized who I had seen in the split-second flash of lightning. "Kenny!" I screamed out into the darkness. But the lightning flashed again. I saw no signs of him floating in the waves. Only the bow of our ship as it finally slipped below the water. I shouted the man's name again. The wind tearing the cry from my lips and off into the storm. "Nathan, he's gone." came a cry from below me. I shot a look down, seeing the captain look up at me with a horrified expression. "Get up the ladder," he ordered. I fought my emotions for a moment, then climbed as quickly as I could for the railing. A few moments later, both the captain and I had hauled ourselves over, collapsing onto the wooden deck with sputtering coughs and groans. When I raised my head, it was to see the ashen face of Wyatt looking down at us. "Where's Kenny?" he cried. I took a shaky breath, then shook my head slowly at him. I saw the shock and horror flash onto his face. The same happened to all of the men standing behind him. For my part, I simply felt numb. Even though I lost my aunt to cancer in 2009 and lost one of my mom's family friends to a brain tumor in 2012, I'd never actually seen someone die before. Not in real life, anyways. My mind was a jumble. I couldn't think properly. Thankfully, though, the captain stood up and spoke, his voice shaking only for a second before hardening. "As hard as this may be for everyone, we need to get inside and out of the storm. We'll have time to be able to grieve later. Right now, we need to get away from the wind and the rain before we catch pneumonia or hypothermia." His words seemed to bolster everyone, even myself, and we all stood gathering our supplies and moving to find a door inside. After a few minutes searching, we found one, and after snapping on the waterproof flashlights, we all stepped inside the ship. Instantly, the sound of the howling wind grew fainter as we found ourselves inside a companionway of some kind. It seemed like it was meant for the crew. It seemed more Spartan in function over form than what I'd seen from the rest of the ship. Nobody said a word as we made our way down until we came to another door. Will, being the first in line, reached out and opened it. We all stepped into what I can only describe as the most luxurious lounge I've ever been in. The walls were plastered with wood that reflected back in the glow of our lights. What appeared to be marble lined the ceiling overhead. I saw dozens of tables and chairs, ones that had once been scattered across the room, lying overturned on their sides. No doubt, thrown about by the storm. Walking further into the room, I turned to the left and aimed my flashlight at the wall. And I nearly jumped out of my skin as my light reflected off a huge face that gazed back at me. "Jesus!" I shouted, feeling my heart begin a marathon in my chest. What? What is it?" I heard Andrew call out. All the men ran to me, aiming their flashlights at what I had seen. Instantly, the tension that filled the room was replaced by the sound of laughter. "Fucking hell, Nate. Are you really that afraid of Queen Elizabeth?" Vinny, another of our crew, asked as he fought for breath. I let out a shaky breath of my own as I played my light over what I now saw was a painting, one of Queen Elizabeth II. Then I began to laugh along with him, thinking to myself, Good Lord, Nathan. You really are a fucking pussy. For a minute, we all stood there laughing and feeling the mood lighten somewhat. The levity helped lighten up the sadness that we had felt. It was cut short by the captain's voice as a loud rumble of thunder came from outside. Alright, everyone. Change into dry clothes and break out the sleeping bags. Didn't get some sleep. This has been one of the worst days of our lives. We need to rest. Tomorrow we'll take stock of the ship and figure out what to do next. And with that, everyone began to fan out, finding a lone corner to change in without being seen. As they did, I approached the captain. Gabe, I said, tapping the man on the shoulder. He turned to look at me, and I instantly saw the haunted look in his eyes. The poor man blamed himself for Kenny. I wanted to say something, say that it wasn't his fault. Instead, I told him that I wanted to stay up a little, get on the laptop and try to get a signal from the satellite connection to try and hopefully find a way to send out a call for help. After a moment's hesitation, he agreed, gesturing towards the vast number of chairs and tables. I nodded, then patted him again on the shoulder before turning away. And, well, that's where I am now. I changed into dry clothes and found a thick cushioned armchair on the side. I set it up right, then pulled out the laptop. The battery was thankfully fully charged, and I have a solar charger if it gets low, which survived. But as I had said from the start, it had to have sustained some kind of water damage, because it won't let me go to many, if any, sites. Only this one. I'm the only one of us left awake now. All around me I can hear the snores of my fellow crew members. I hear them rolling over to get comfortable on the carpeted floors. I still hear the rain pounding on the roof of the great ship. Hear the thunder rumble and feel the ship lurching up and down in the waves. I just pray she doesn't hit any rocks during the night. We don't need another problem on our hands. There's one final thing I have to say. I can't help but feel foolish about this. I know that we're the only ones on board. Otherwise, people would have already come to see us by now, and we would have been swarmed with crew or passengers. And yet, I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched. I know it's ridiculous, but I can't make the feeling go away. I feel like a goldfish with its owner staring in at him. And I don't like it one bit. I even took a walk around outside this lounge to reassure myself that nobody else is here. I know the captain wouldn't have liked me doing so, but I wouldn't have been able to sleep otherwise. If anybody reads this, can anybody help us? We're only fishermen who have dealt with a 70-foot long liner, not a giant cruise ship or ocean liner. Does anyone know what we have to do to get the power up and going again? Where we have to go? If we can get power restored, we might be able to get a radio on board working again and let people know that we're out here. And is there anything else important we should do tomorrow? Anything at all that you can think of, please just let me know. If anyone sees this, I'll be checking back in the morning. Hopefully somebody has. Oh, and one thing before I forget. I don't know if this will help, but when I went for my walk to prove to myself that nobody else was here, I found a life ring which had the name of this ship stamped on it. Maybe someone can look to see if the ship has been labeled as missing or something, which would work to try to get someone to know where we are. The name of the ship bears the same name as the huge, almost creepy looking painting on the wall that in the dark I try not to look at. RMS, Queen Elizabeth. Oh my god, that was hard to record, but an amazing story. I don't know why I decided to go with an accent to that whole thing, especially with it being an hour long. But hey, now I've started it. That's it. I'm dedicated. I also just realized when I said an hour long that I was wrong. It's only been about 47 minutes. Oh well. Either way, the only reason it's hard to do an English accent is because I keep almost going back to my Texas one while I'm talking. So I gotta kind of re-listen to myself. God, why did I talk so much? I'm sorry everyone. Okay, so let's start this part again after I move around a bit. Dang it. My chair is so freaking loud. Okay, let's start again. Well, wasn't that an amazing story? This one is titled, My Crew and I Are Stuck Aboard an Abandoned Ship. Can you help us? Written by an amazing author that goes by the name J.L. Goodwin, 1990. What's really cool about this is there's actually quite a few chapters to the season. I think there is, and I'm just scrolling down now as I talk, so hey, how are you? Have you had a good time? There is a total of 6 parts to this. So we're going to have 6 parts, and I hope that they are as long as this, because oh my gosh, it was actually quite fun. Even though I bitched a little bit at the start of this, it was quite fun to be able to do it. Sorry about the creakiness of my chair. These end bits, I will probably never be too crazy about making them better. You need to know that I am me, which means the creaky chair, the long talks, the stupid. That's me. That's the guy you're listening to. So I hope that doesn't bother anyone too much, but in all fairness, what are you gonna do about it? Not watch? Shouldn't say that. I mean, I hardly get any views. But anyway, let us go through the usual. As normal, you will find the links to the story in the description. I hope you have had an amazing night or day wherever you are. I hope you stay safe, you've enjoyed your time with your friends and family, and most importantly, over everything that there is, just remember to keep being you, okay? God, I've talked too much. Anyway, I'm Grim.